Vanova, and today we're going to be making a pivot table. But before we do that, we need to make a mathematical equation to help us calculate gross margin. So we're going to scroll to the right here, and in column S1, we're going to go ahead and rename the column to gross margin. There we go, and we're going to click right below it in column S2, and this is where we're going to start our equation. So to start an equation, we always start with an equal sign, and we're going to use an open parentheses, which helps us be more precise. The equation for gross margin is unit price minus unit cost and divided by also unit price. So if you look at our whole table, we have a lot of information here, from product date to the product to order quantity, unit price, unit cost. So right here we can find our unit price and unit cost, which is in column P1 and Q1. If you hover over it, you should see it right there. So to use our values, we're going to go ahead and go down to P2 and Q2, which is what we're going to be using in our equation. You can either type it out, or you can click on it, which for me is easier to click on it. So we are going to do unit price, which is P2 minus Q2 slash, which is used to divide, by, again, P2, which is our unit price. Then we're going to close our parentheses to end the equation, and we're going to go ahead and hit enter, and there's our value right there. So in some equations in Excel, you can go ahead and use the $ function, which in Excel, a $ can be used to lock in a value, but in this case, we don't want that. We want the value to change as we go down, so we're not going to go ahead and use that. Now to put our value down to the rest of the column, we can either do this by hovering over to the right, and as our cross gets darker right here, we can drag down. But since we do have a lot of information, an easier and faster way to do this is by, again, hovering over the right hand corner and double clicking it. And that should automatically, as you see, pop up all of your values, which as you go down, you can click on them, and the equation for each one changes. Here it is P3 and Q3 and P3 again, and then here it's P4 and Q4. So because we didn't use the $, our values keep changing, or else the values could be the same for each and every column. Now we will move on to the second task of making a pivot table, which in Excel it is used to summarize large amounts of data where you can customize specific data you would like to look at. There are multiple ways to do this. One way is by clicking anywhere on any cell, which for this we're going to go ahead and use D2, for example, and we're going to go ahead and scroll down so we can see all of our columns. Now we're going to go ahead and hit Control A on Windows, or on Macintosh, which is what I'm using, we can hit Command A, and that automatically selects all of your data to use in the pivot table. But a faster and easier way to do this is if you scroll, and right here next to column A, we see this triangle up here, and once you hover over it, it highlights, so we can go ahead and click that. And it also automatically selects all of your data that we can use. So we're going to go ahead and use that method since it is faster. Now, to create the pivot table, we need to click on the insert button, which is right up here. And on the very left, we see pivot table. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. And it should automatically have your table range as the whole data. And you also have some options of choosing where you want to place your pivot table. You can either have it in a new worksheet that should pop up down here, or you can have it on this existing worksheet. For me, I'm going to do a new worksheet. That way I can just be more organized and have it on separate if I want to look at it. So we're going to hit OK, and there's our worksheet. Now, if you do what I just did and clicked out of it and you don't see your menu anymore for your pivot table, you can just go ahead and click right back on the pivot table, and the pivot table field should automatically show up again. Also, you can rename your sheet right here and move it down if you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and rename it as pivot table, just so I know what this is for. Now to move our fields, we are going to click and drag. Now to move our fields, we are going to drag and drop with our mouse. So we're going to go ahead and find sales channel, which is right here, and we're going to drag and drop it to columns. Now we're also going to find ship date, which is right here, or we can use the search engine and it should also pop right up. And we're going to drag and drop this to rows, and let's exit out of that. So now once we have our ship date, years, quarters, months, and ship date comes up, but we only want to use quarters, so we're going to go ahead and delete the other sections. To do this, on Macintosh, we're going to have this eye icon, or on Windows it might be a drop down. So for here, we're going to right click on it, and we're going to remove the field for years and just leave quarters. So we're going to do the same thing for months, and we're going to go ahead and do the same thing for ship date. So now we're just left with quarters. Now we're also going to find gross margin, which is what we created earlier, and order quantity. So we can go ahead and put gross margin, and there it is. And we're going to drag that to our values. And we also want order quantity, which is right here. And we're going to also drag and drop that to values. So now that we have our values, we can change the format by clicking on them and changing the format, which right here is again the eye icon, or it will be a drop down. So we're going to go ahead, or you have to double click on it, which you might have to do, but it should pop up. There we go. So for gross margin right now it is set as sum, but we want it as average. So we're going to go ahead and click average, and we're also going to hit number and click number one more time. So we can change our formatting for the number if we have decimals or commas. So for this one, we should have 2 decimal places. If not, we can change it by clicking on it and typing a different decimal place. And we're not going to have any commas, so we can just go ahead and click OK and click OK again. And as you see, our average changed. And we're going to go ahead and do the same thing to order quantity. So we're going to go ahead and right click. And there we go. It is already set for sum, so we're good with that, but we're going to go ahead and change the number by hitting number and number again. And we're going to go ahead and change our decimal place to 0 instead. And we're going to hit, if you hit enter, you can just go back into number again and it should show up. We're also going to go ahead here and go in the checkbox for separators, which is our commas. We're going to check that, and it should show you right here an example of what it should look like. Hit OK again, and OK one more time. And here in our table, you can see that the order quantity has changed to no decimals and to have commas, while our gross margins have 2 decimal places and no commas. Now that we have completed this task, we will insert a slicer, which shows filter data. To do this, go to the pivot table analyzer, which we are already in. And right here is a column for insert slicer. It should have a filter looking like highlight with a blue bar on top and a gray bar on the bottom. This is indicated as a filter because it does filter data, as I said before. So we're going to go ahead and click that. Now we're going to select product and sales channel. So sales channel is right here. I'm going to scroll down and we're going to find product. Now that we have selected both, we're going to hit OK. And here are our slicers. We can go ahead and move them as we wish, so our data is shown properly. And on sales channel, we can choose which type of information we want shown. So here in sales channel, we're going to choose online. And for products, we're going to use this scroll bar and go down to where you find the S's, and we're going to go ahead and hit sculptures. So automatically in our pivot table, we see the informations for each quarter for online purchases of sculptures. This limits the data and only shows what we have selected. Now, go back to the pivot table chart analyzer ribbon, which should show up if now go back to the pivot chart analyzer ribbon, which since it's not showing up right here, we can just go ahead and click our pivot chart and it should automatically show up again. So go to pivot chart analyzer ribbon and we're gonna hit right here pivot chart, and it should automatically be a cluster chart, but if it is not, it should automatically be a pivot chart right here. That should be a cluster, but if it's not, we can go here to the design ribbon and we can change the chart type, which is right here. There is multiple 2D, 3D, and 2D bars. When you hover over each one, they also have line, pie charts, hierarchy, statistical, but we want a cluster chart, which we already have. But now we also want we also need to change to have a line on the secondary axis. To do this, we have to hover over combos, and if we hover over the middle one, it will show up as a line on secondary axis, which is exactly what we want. We're going to go ahead and click that, and it should automatically pop on. So now we can analyze our data that we have selected and our chart that visually shows us what our data shows. So as you see here, our blue columns are average gross margin, and our orange or red line is the sum of orange quantity. So this is all for online purchases. So as you can see, there is each quarter and how much it has increased or decreased. Now, if you have more than this information, which can sometimes happen, you can hover over it, as I am here, and it will automatically show in quarter one the value is 2,561.15. And you can also hover over the order quantity, which here in quarter two is a value of 29. And here in quarter one is a value of 47. So we can see that it decreased. And up here, it is the highest it has ever been, which is at an 80. So now if we change, like let's say the sales channel to in-store instead of online purchases, we can automatically see that our information changes. Instead of looking the numbers, which can take more time, we can instead look at the pivot table and pivot chart right here, which will show now that we are in-store. And it will also show right here, if we hover over it, that here in quarter two it was 46, and gradually we start increasing to 79 and then to 153 in quarter four. And yeah, that is all. That is how you use pivot table. I hope you learned some more things, and thank you for watching.